The station's emergency medical bay buzzes with frantic activity as doctors work to save the critically wounded Pathfinder crew. Dr. Elena Reeves sits on an examination table, wincing as a medic treats the plasma burn on her forearm. Her eyes never leave the data tablet displaying the crystalline fragments recovered from the ship's hull. These aren't just ship components, she murmurs, zooming in on a microscopic section that pulses with faint bioluminescence. They're alive somehow. Across the room, Captain Marcus Chen endures the synthetic bonding of his facial wound without anesthetic. His attention remains fixed on the tactical display showing the attack coordinates. 3 exploration vessels had gone missing in neighboring sectors over the past 18 months. Everyone had assumed navigational failures or cosmic phenomena. Now Chen understands the grim truth. We weren't their first targets, he tells Admiral Kenzo when the gray-haired officer enters the medical bay. Just the first to make it back alive. The Admiral's expression darkens. The Defense Council is convening an emergency session in 6 hours. They'll want your first-hand account. Chen nods, his newly sealed wound pulling tight across his cheek. Tell them I'll be ready, and tell them to prepare for war. Hours later, Elena finds herself in the station's xenobiology lab, hastily repurposed from a botanical research facility. The crystalline fragments are secured in containment fields as she runs spectrum analyses. Each scan reveals more disturbing details, neural-like pathways, complex molecular structures unlike anything in Earth's biological catalog. They're silicon-based, she explains to her hastily assembled research team. Their technology appears to be a hybrid of mechanical engineering and biological growth. These ship fragments share DNA markers, if you can call it that. They're all grown from the same source material. A junior researcher raises his hand. Could they be sentient? The ship components themselves, I mean. Elena considers the question. Possible. The neural pathways suggest some level of awareness, but whether it's independent consciousness or an extension of the pilots, she shrugs. We need more data. The lab door slides open as Commander Chen enters, now dressed in a fresh uniform with captain's insignia. His bandaged face gives him a grim appearance. The council is ready for us, Doctor, he says. Bring everything you found. As they walk the curved corridor toward the station's administrative section, Elena notices Chen's tightly controlled rage. His hands clench and unclench rhythmically. We followed every first contact protocol, he says quietly. Maintain distance. Broadcast on all frequencies. Presented no weapons posture. His voice catches. Rodriguez was manning communications. 24 years old. She was translating our greeting into mathematical sequences when their first salvo hit. Elena places a hand on his arm. This isn't your fault, Captain. No, he agrees, eyes forward. It's theirs. The council chamber falls silent as they enter. 12 grim-faced officials from Earth and the colonies sit around a circular table, holographic displays showing the Pathfinder's damaged hull from multiple angles. Admiral Kenzo gestures them forward. Captain Chen, Dr. Reeves. The council has reviewed your preliminary reports. Now we need your assessment. Who are these aliens? What are their capabilities? And most importantly, will they attack again? Chen steps forward, his posture military straight despite his injuries. Sir, they call themselves the Shriken. At least that's what we've designated them based on the crystalline structure of their vessels. Their technology appears to be centuries beyond ours in some respects, particularly their weapon systems. He activates a holographic display showing the attack sequence. They fired without provocation, without communication, without warning. 17 of my crew died in the initial assault. His voice remained steady, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. As for whether they'll attack again, they'd already have. The Galileo outpost near Proxima Centauri went dark 20 minutes ago. Long-range telemetry detected energy signatures matching the weapons used against the Pathfinder. The room erupts in shocked voices as Elena steps forward with her findings, knowing that humanity's understanding of its place in the universe has changed forever. The stars are no longer a frontier of discovery and opportunity. They have become a battlefield. Admiral Hiroshi Tanaka's presentation concludes with footage from the Galileo outpost, the final transmission showing crystalline vessels cutting through the station's defenses like paper. The Defense Council chamber remains silent for several heartbeats after the screen goes dark. 4 billion credits, announces Councillor Rajesh from the Mars Coalition. That's what I'm prepared to authorize from our planetary reserves for immediate military conversion of the Phobos shipyards. Europa's representative stands next. Europa Station pledges its entire science division to weapons research, effective immediately. One by one, representatives from every human settlement pledge resources, ships, and personnel. What began as an emergency session has transformed into humanity's unified declaration of intent. Commander Chen studies the tactical projections as Admiral Tanaka outlines the formation of 3 new battle groups. The Shriken incursion vectors form an unmistakable pattern. They're probing humanity's defenses, testing responses, and gauging capabilities. Classic military strategy, which means they think like warriors. Something Chen can understand. Commander, your thoughts? Tanaka's question pulls Chen from his analysis. The Shriken have superior technology, but they lack innovation. Chen responds, stepping toward the holographic display. They use the same attack pattern against Pathfinder and Galileo. If they're as tactically rigid as they appear, we can use that predictability against them. Dr. Reeves enters the chamber, dark circles under her eyes betraying her exhaustion after 48 hours of non-stop research. Council members, I've completed initial analysis of the Shriken technology recovered from the Pathfinder. The lights dim as Reeves projects microscopic images of crystalline structures pulsing with internal light. These aren't just ship components, they're biomechanical organisms. The Shriken vessels are, in essence, grown rather than manufactured. The neural pathways suggest a hive-like communication system between ship elements. Councillor Zheng from the Lunar Authority leans forward. Are you suggesting their ships are alive, Doctor? In a manner of speaking. They're cybernetic organisms, technology and biology, so seamlessly integrated that distinguishing between them is almost impossible. Reeves highlights a pulsing node within the crystal structure. Most importantly, we've identified what appears to be a central nervous system analog. If we can develop weapons that target these specific structures, we could disable their ships without having to match their firepower. Chen finishes, exchanging a meaningful look with Reeves. Admiral Tanaka nods grimly. Dr. Reeves, you'll head up the new Xenobiology Warfare Division. Commander Chen, effective immediately, you're promoted to Fleet Commander of our First Response Group. Your orders are to establish a defensive perimeter around our core systems while our shipyards convert to military production. As the council session adjourns, Chen finds himself alone in the observation dome. Earth hangs suspended in the blackness, peaceful and vulnerable. He barely notices when Reeves joins him. They're calling it the Crystalline War on the news feeds, she says quietly. Chen's hand unconsciously touches the regeneration patch covering his facial wound. Wars have beginnings and endings, names and peace treaties. This is something else. Existential conflict, Reeves supplies. Us or them. It didn't have to be. Chen responds, his voice tight with controlled emotion. We were prepared for peaceful contact. Rodriguez had composed a mathematical greeting sequence based on universal constants. Hansen had cultural exchange packages ready. We approached with shields down. Reeves studies his profile, noting how the scar tissue is already forming beneath the medical patch. You couldn't have known. That's the thing, Elena. He turns to face her, using her first name for the first time. None of us could have known. We went out there expecting to find wonder and discovery. Instead, we found something that wants us extinct. How do we fight an enemy so fundamentally different that communication itself is impossible? We adapt, she answers simply. That's what humans do better than any species in Earth's history. We adapt, we innovate, and we survive. Chen's communication device chirps with an incoming priority message. The first converted warships are ready for inspection, he reads. Looks like we're about to find out if humanity's survival instinct is enough against an enemy that evolved among the stars. As they leave the observation dome, emergency sirens begin to wail. Another Shriken attack, another human outpost going dark. The war that will decide humanity's fate is no longer coming. It's here. The bridge of the UES Retribution shudders as another Shriken barrage impacts the forward shields. Commander Chen grips the tactical console, studying the battle display with laser focus. 6 human vessels against 11 Shriken ships, the worst odds they've faced yet in the Proxima Centauri engagement. Resonance frequencies calibrated and locked, reports Lieutenant Quan, her fingers dancing across the weapons console. Targeting their central nodes as ordered. Chen nods sharply. All ships, fire on my mark. He glances at Dr. Reeves, who monitors sensor readings from a science station hastily installed on the bridge. Doctor, will your modifications hold? Reeves doesn't look up from her display. The frequency modulations should disrupt their neural pathways for approximately 20 seconds. It's the window we need. All ships, fire now. The human fleet unleashes a coordinated barrage, not of conventional weapons, but precisely calibrated energy pulses that ripple across space. The effect on the Shriken vessels is immediate and dramatic. The crystalline ships seem to shudder, their previously coordinated movements becoming erratic. Some drift aimlessly, while others spin helplessly. It's working. Reeves exclaims, eyes wide with scientific wonder and grim satisfaction. Their neural networks are temporarily paralyzed. Chen doesn't waste the advantage. All ships target their propulsion nodes with standard armaments. Fire at will. The human vessels unleash a devastating barrage against the disabled Shriken ships. One by one, the crystalline vessels shatter into glittering fragments that drift through the void like deadly snowflakes. For the first time since the conflict began, humanity has secured a decisive victory. The bridge erupts in relieved cheers, but Chen's expression remains serious. Damage report, and begin recovery operations for the crystalline fragments. Dr. Reeves needs more samples. As the crew carries out his orders, Reeves approaches the command chair. Commander, I need to show you something. She transfers data from her tablet to the main display. I've been analyzing real-time readings during the attack. The frequency disruption didn't just disable their ships, it caused them pain. Chen studies the wavelength patterns on the display. You're saying they felt it. The ships themselves? Not exactly. Reeves zooms in on a microscopic section of recovered Shriken technology. The crystalline structures house what appear to be consciousness nodes. The Shriken don't just pilot their ships, they're neurologically integrated with them. When we disrupted their neural pathways, we were attacking the aliens directly, Chen finishes, understanding dawning in his eyes. That's why the strategy worked so well. We weren't just disabling technology. We were essentially causing a massive seizure in the pilots themselves. Their moment of revelation is interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth. Admiral Tanaka's grim face appears on the main view screen. Commander Chen, we need you to return to the Sol system immediately. Mars is under attack. The tactical display shows a massive Shriken fleet descending on the red planet, far larger than any force encountered previously. Real-time footage reveals crystalline vessels cutting through Mars' orbital defenses, targeting the dome habitats on the surface. My God, whispers Lieutenant Quan. There are 3 million civilians in those habitats. Chen's expression hardens. Set course for Mars, maximum speed. Alert medical to prepare for mass casualties. He turns to Reeves. Doctor, can you amplify the resonance weapons effect? Make it permanent rather than temporary. Reeves considers the question, her scientific mind racing through possibilities. Possibly, if we target specific neural clusters within their ships rather than blanket disruption. Yes, I might be able to modify the weapons during transit. As the Retribution and its battle group accelerate toward Mars, emergency transmissions flood in, desperate calls for help, automated distress signals, the screams of civilians under attack. The bridge crew works in grim silence, each facing the reality that despite their recent victory, the war has taken a devastating turn. In her makeshift lab, Reeves works feverishly on the resonance weapon modifications, driven by the knowledge that millions of lives depend on her success. Through the viewport, she watches as the stars streak by, the ship hurtling toward what will surely be the largest battle of the war so far. The path to Mars is lit by the distant glow of burning habitats. Humanity has tasted victory, but the true test of their resolve is just beginning. 2 years into the war, the landscape of human civilization has transformed beyond recognition. The orbital shipyards above Earth glow continuously as production never ceases. Children born since first contact have never known a sky without defense platforms visible as moving stars. Civilian vessels now travel in armed convoys, their crews trained in emergency combat procedures. Commander Chen, now Admiral Chen after the successful defense of Mars, stands before the holographic battle map in the war room of the UES Indomitable, humanity's newest and most powerful warship. The upcoming battle at Ta City represents their most ambitious operation yet. The Shriken expect a frontal assault, Chen explains to his assembled officers. Their previous encounters with our forces have established a pattern they believe will follow. Instead, we'll divide our fleet into 3 battle groups. He manipulates the holographic display, showing ships concealing themselves within the system's dense planetary rings. They'll never expect us to split our forces when outnumbered. Lieutenant Commander Quan, promoted after Proxima Centauri, studies the plan with a critical eye. The resonance cannons have a limited range, sir. If any of our groups are detected prematurely, that's where Dr. Reeves' latest innovation comes in, Chen responds, nodding to the scientist who has become an indispensable part of his strategic team. Reeves steps forward, her once civilian demeanor now tempered by 2 years of warfare. We've developed a biological agent that targets the organic components of Shriken vessels, she explains, displaying molecular diagrams. It's essentially a virus designed for their unique biology. Once deployed, it temporarily paralyzes their ship's neural pathways, rendering them unable to maneuver or fire weapons for approximately 3 minutes. 3 minutes is an eternity in space combat, Chen adds. More than enough time to close distance and deploy resonance cannons with maximum effectiveness. The plan proceeds flawlessly. The Shriken fleet enters the Ta City system, anticipating a head-on engagement. Instead, they find themselves caught in a perfect 3-dimensional ambush. Human ships emerge from hiding, deploying Reeves' biological agent before the Shriken can respond. The crystalline vessels drift helplessly as resonance cannons shatter ship after ship. From the Indomitable's bridge, Chen watches the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Casualties, he asks as the last Shriken vessel disintegrates. Minimal, sir, reports Quan. 3 ships damaged, 14 crew members injured. No fatalities. For the first time in the war, humanity has achieved a decisive victory without significant losses. The bridge crew allows themselves a moment of celebration, but Chen's expression remains guarded. Experience has taught him that Shriken responses to defeat are swift and brutal. His caution proves justified. As the fleet begins recovery operations, emergency transmissions flood in from across human space. Multiple outer colonies report simultaneous Shriken attacks using a new weapon, atmospheric degradation devices that cause protective domes to fail catastrophically. The holographic display shows real-time footage from New Eden Colony. Thousands of civilians run in panic as their habitat dome turns cloudy, then begins to dissolve. Parents desperately place breather masks on children as the atmosphere vents into space. Within minutes, the entire colony falls silent, its population of 30,000 reduced to frozen corpses. Similar reports come in from 6 other colonies. In a single coordinated strike, the Shriken have killed over 200,000 civilians. The war room falls silent as the magnitude of the loss sinks in. Admiral Tanaka's grim face appears on the communication screen. Admiral Chen, return to Earth immediately. The Defense Council is convening an emergency session. Chen turns to Reeves, whose face has gone pale with horror. They're escalating. This isn't just war anymore. It's extinction-level conflict. Reeves nods slowly, her scientific mind already racing with terrible possibilities. I've been experimenting with more permanent applications of the biological agent, modifications that could target their reproductive capabilities. You mean sterilization? Chen asks quietly, ensuring other officers can't overhear. Or worse, Reeves admits, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. We have the knowledge now to create something that could end their entire species, not just defeat them, eliminate them completely. Chen looks back at the footage still playing from the devastated colonies. Children's bodies float lifelessly among the ruins of what were once thriving communities. Prepare your research for presentation to the Defense Council, he says finally. They attacked first. If this continues, we may have no choice but to make sure they never attack anyone again. As the Indomitable sets course for Earth, Chen realizes they've reached the war's true turning point. Not a battle of ships and weapons, but a battle for humanity's soul. The Defense Council chamber has been relocated underground following Shriken attempts to target government facilities. Rain from a rare thunderstorm drums against the armored skylights, creating a somber percussion to match the grim mood below. Dr. Reeves stands before the assembled military and civilian leaders, her presentation on the biological weapon projected in holographic detail. The molecular structures rotate slowly in the air, complex and eerily beautiful despite their deadly purpose. The agent targets specific genetic markers unique to Shriken biology, she explains, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. Once deployed through their atmospheric systems, it would render them incapable of reproduction within one lunar cycle. Their population would age and die naturally, with no future generations. Admiral Tanaka rises from his seat, face lined with the weight of 2 years of brutal conflict. This isn't warfare, Doctor. This is genocide. With respect, Admiral, Chen interjects, stepping forward to stand beside Reeves. The Shriken have shown no interest in negotiation or coexistence. The atmospheric attacks on our colonies killed 200,000 civilians, including 60,000 children. Their tactics indicate they're pursuing our complete extinction. Councillor Rajesh from the Mars Coalition pounds his fist on the table. My constituents are still burying their dead. If we have a weapon that can end this war without losing more human lives, we have a moral obligation to use it. The debate rages for hours. Some argue for restraint and continued conventional warfare. Others advocate immediate deployment of the sterilization agent. Through it all, Reeves remains at the presentation podium, watching the ethical battle unfold with scientific detachment masking her own moral conflict. During a brief recess, she finds Chen alone in a side chamber, staring at casualty reports from the latest attacks. If we do this, she says quietly, we become something else. Not just warriors defending our species, but executioners ending another. Chen doesn't look up from the reports. I keep thinking about something my grandfather told me. He fought in the resource wars in the 2090s. He said sometimes surviving means doing things you'll spend the rest of your life trying to forgive yourself for. He finally meets her gaze. I can live with being unforgiven. I can't live with being the admiral who allowed humanity to be exterminated when we had the means to prevent it. Their conversation is interrupted when alarms blare throughout the facility. The council reconvenes immediately as Intelligence Director Moreau rushes in with urgent news. Long-range probes have detected massive energy signatures in Shriken territory, she reports, projecting the sensor data. Based on the quantum resonance patterns, they appear to be developing weapons capable of triggering artificial solar flares. One such weapon could render Earth uninhabitable. The chamber erupts in shocked voices. Admiral Tanaka calls for order, his earlier moral objections visibly wavering in the face of this new threat. "How long until these weapons are operational?" he asks. "Based on current energy output readings, 3 months at most," Morrall responds. "Possibly less." Ken turns to Reeves. "And your biological agent, how quickly could it be deployed?" "Production could be completed within 6 weeks," she answers. "Deployment would require penetrating Shriken territory with specialized delivery vessels." The council falls silent, the magnitude of the decision before them hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Defense Minister Okafor speaks, her voice carrying the weight of authority. "We will proceed with development of Dr. Reeves' biological agent as a contingency measure," she declares. "Simultaneously, we will launch Operation Retribution, a full-scale conventional assault on key Shriken military installations to delay their weapon development and create an opening for potential deployment of the agent if deemed necessary." As the meeting adjourns, Reeves gathers her research materials with shaking hands. The decision has been made, not a final commitment to species-wide extinction, but the first step down that path. Outside the chamber, she finds Chen waiting. In his hand is a small holographic projector displaying images of the colonies destroyed in the atmospheric attacks. Children's faces rotate slowly, each representing thousands lost. "I know this haunts you," he says quietly. "It should. It haunts me too. But remember why we're doing this." He closes his hand around the projector, extinguishing the images. "They attacked first. Everything that follows is on them, not us." Reeves nods, not entirely convinced, but finding a measure of cold comfort in his words. Together, they walk toward the laboratory where she will develop the means to end an entire species, carrying the weight of humanity's survival on their shoulders. Operation Retribution unfolds across Shriken space like a carefully choreographed dance of destruction. Human fleets, no longer outmatched technologically thanks to 2 years of desperate innovation, push deeper into enemy territory than ever before. Admiral Chen coordinates from the command deck of the UES Nemesis, humanity's newest flagship equipped with the most advanced resonance cannons yet developed. 7th Fleet reports Outpost Sigma has been secured. Lieutenant Commander Quan announces. Shriken resistance was minimal. Ken studies the tactical display where dozens of human battle groups systematically dismantle the Shriken defense network. Their strategy is working. Simultaneous attacks on multiple fronts have stretched the enemy's forces thin, preventing them from mounting an effective defense anywhere. And the solar flare facility? Chen asks, focusing on the primary objective. Strike Team Epsilon has breached the outer defenses, Quan responds. Dr. Reeves is with them. Chen's expression tightens. Reeves had insisted on joining the strike team, arguing that only she could properly identify and neutralize the technical components of the solar flare weapon. He had reluctantly approved, knowing her expertise was irreplaceable, but the thought of her in active combat fills him with dread. Maintain open communications with Strike Team Epsilon, he orders. I want updates every 5 minutes. On the Shriken facility, Reeves moves through crystalline corridors with a squad of Special Operations troops. Her environmental suit protects her from the silicon-based atmosphere that would shred human lungs in seconds. Through her helmet visor, she marvels at the alien architecture, organic curves blending seamlessly with geometric precision, the entire structure seeming to pulse with life. According to scans, the primary reactor should be through that chamber. She tells the squad leader, pointing to a translucent doorway that throbs with blue-green light. The soldiers take defensive positions as their tech specialist works to override the door controls. Reeves uses the moment to collect samples from the living walls, her scientific curiosity undiminished even in the heart of enemy territory. Doctor, calls one of the soldiers. You should see this. The trooper points to a smaller side chamber they've just breached. Inside, crystalline structures house what appear to be suspended animation chambers. Within each, a Shriken floats in luminescent fluid. This is humanity's first clear view of their enemy. Not the ships they've been battling, but the beings themselves. They're vaguely humanoid but with silicon-based physiology. Crystalline growths extend from their spines and craniums, pulsing with the same rhythms as their ships. Most striking are their eyes, multifaceted like insects but glowing with unmistakable intelligence. They're beautiful, Reeves whispers, the scientist in her momentarily overcoming the soldier. They're the enemy, the squad leader reminds her curtly. Doors open. Let's move. In the reactor chamber, Reeves quickly identifies the components of the solar flare weapon, a massive crystalline structure channeling energy in patterns that would allow it to manipulate stellar material across vast distances. As the soldiers secure the perimeter, she begins the process of shutting it down and collecting critical data. Admiral Chen. She reports via secure channel. The weapon is as advanced as we feared. They're closer to completion than our intelligence suggested. Maybe 3 weeks, not 3 months. Chen's voice comes through her headset, tight with concern. Can you disable it? Yes, but that's not all. Reeves hesitates, uncertain how to explain what she's discovered. Sir, I found something unexpected in their computer systems. There appears to be a communication node, different from anything we've encountered before. It's reaching out. Reaching out how? It's generating a signal pattern similar to the mathematical greeting sequence we attempted during first contact. Admiral, I think they're trying to communicate with us. Silence fills each channel as Chen processes this information. After 3 years of relentless warfare, after millions of human deaths, the Shriken were attempting communication. Secure the facility, he finally orders. Upload all data from their systems. We need to understand what's happening. As Reeves works, her scientific instruments detect a subtle change in the crystalline structures around her. The entire facility seems to be resonating in response to her presence, almost as if it's studying her as intently as she's studying it. Admiral, she says slowly, I think the facility itself is alive. And I think it's aware of us. Not just as enemies, but as beings. The implications of her discovery ripple through the command structure. As Operation Retribution continues its advance across Shriken space, humanity stands on the verge of a revelation that could change the fundamental nature of the conflict. The Shriken transmission plays on endless loop in the secure conference room aboard the UES Nemesis. A team of xenolinguists and communication specialists work around the clock to decode the complex crystalline patterns and convert them into understandable format. After 72 hours of intensive analysis, they achieve a breakthrough. We've managed to translate approximately 60% of the message, reports Dr. Chandrasekhar, head of the linguistics team. The Shriken language operates on multiple simultaneous frequencies. They are essentially having several conversations at once through different harmonic ranges. Admiral Chen and Dr. Reeves exchange glances. 3 years of brutal war, and only now are they beginning to understand how their enemy communicates. Play the translation, Chen orders. The holographic display reconfigures to show flowing text alongside visual representations of the original crystalline patterns. Humans, destruction imminent. Your technology path leads to dimensional fracture. 16 star systems destroyed. Our homeworld. Your homeworld. Others. Prevention necessary. Attack regrettable. Communication difficult. Frequencies incompatible. Oracle predictions absolute. Silence fills the conference room as the implications sink in. The Shriken had attacked humanity not out of aggression or territorial expansion, but because they believed Earth posed an existential threat. They're claiming they attacked us preemptively because they foresaw us accidentally destroying both our civilizations. Admiral Tanaka asks via quantum link from Earth Command. His skepticism is evident even across the vast distance. That's what they're claiming, Reeves confirms. The reference to Oracle predictions suggests some form of predictive capability, perhaps advanced simulations or probability modeling. Or they're stalling, interjects Intelligence Director Morrow. We've pushed deeper into their territory than ever before. Their solar flare weapon has been neutralized. This could be a delaying tactic while they prepare some new form of attack. Chen studies the message again, remembering the unprovoked attack that started everything. Dr. Reeves analyzed the mathematical models included with the transmission. I want to know if there's any validity to their claim about dimensional fracture. Reeves withdraws to her laboratory with a team of quantum physicists. Hours stretch into days as Operation Retribution continues its advance across striken space. Finally, she requests an urgent meeting with Chen and the senior command staff. Her expression is grave as she presents her findings. We've analyzed the Shriken models, and they're disturbingly accurate. Several experimental FTL drive designs in development at Europa Station operate on principles that could, under specific circumstances, create instabilities in the fabric of space-time. She projects a simulation showing how these instabilities could cascade into catastrophic tears in the dimensional boundary. According to both their models and our verification, such an event would create a chain reaction destroying multiple star systems, including Sol and the Shriken homeworld. You're saying they were telling the truth? Chen asks, struggling to reconcile this information with 3 years of brutal warfare. They believed they were. Reeves answers carefully. Their predictive models indicated a 97% probability of catastrophic dimensional fracture within the next 30 years if human FTL research continued along specific pathways. Admiral Tanaka's holographic form leans forward. So they launched a preemptive war to prevent a disaster they believed was virtually certain. From their perspective, attacking us wasn't aggression. It was survival, Reeves confirms. And given what we now know about the potential consequences of certain FTL technologies we were developing, they weren't entirely wrong. The conference room fills with heated debate. Some argue for immediate cessation of hostilities and attempts at negotiation. Others, including Director Moreau, remain skeptical, pointing out that regardless of their motivations, the Shriken have killed millions of humans and shown no restraint in targeting civilian populations. As the arguments continue, Lieutenant Commander Quan interrupts with urgent news. Admiral, long-range sensors have detected massive energy buildups across Shriken space. They appear to be activating defensive systems on an unprecedented scale. Chen accesses the sensor data, his experienced eye immediately recognizing the pattern. Those aren't defensive preparations. They're preparing for a coordinated attack. He zooms in on energy signatures emanating from deep within Shriken territory. Multiple launch signatures. They're deploying something directed toward Earth. Reeves studies the data, her scientific expertise cutting through the confusion. These energy patterns, they match the preliminary stages of the solar flare weapon technology. But they've modified it, improved it. If these readings are accurate, they're launching weapons capable of triggering simultaneous solar flares in multiple star systems, including Sol. Chen's expression hardens. So much for their peaceful overture. Prepare the fleet for emergency response. And Dr. Reeves, he pauses, meeting her gaze directly. Prepare your biological agent for deployment. We may have no choice but to use it. As alarms sound throughout the fleet, Chen can't help but wonder if they've just experienced the Shriken version of a lie, a deception designed to buy time for their ultimate weapon, or if, perhaps, different factions within the alien civilization have different agendas. Either way, humanity now faces its most critical moment of the war. Red alert klaxons wail throughout the human fleet as ships maneuver into defensive formations. The situation room aboard the Nemesis buzzes with controlled chaos as officers relay urgent updates from across Shriken space. Solar flare weapon platforms activating in 7 systems simultaneously, reports Lieutenant Commander Quan. Estimated time to full deployment, 32 minutes. Admiral Chen studies the tactical display, searching for a solution that doesn't involve species-wide extinction. Status of our strike teams. Teams are in position at 3 of the 7 platforms. Quan answers. The others are too distant to reach before activation. Chen turns to Dr. Reeves, who monitors the deployment preparations for her biological agent. Her face is ashen, the weight of what they're about to do evident in her eyes. "Is there another way?" he asks quietly, stepping close enough that only she can hear. Reeves hesitates, then activates a private display. "During my analysis of the Shriken facility, I discovered something about their neural structure." She shows him scans of the crystalline beings they encountered. Their consciousness doesn't reside solely in their physical bodies. It extends through these neural filaments into centralized nodes, the Nexus beings. "Like a hive mind?" Chen asks. "Not exactly. More like a distributed consciousness with centralized coordination points." She highlights specific structures in the scan. "If we target these Nexus beings specifically rather than the entire species, we could disable their capacity to wage war without exterminating them." Chen finishes, understanding dawning in his eyes. A new plan takes shape with desperate speed. Special operations teams equipped with a modified version of Reeves' biological agent deployed to the identified Nexus locations. Meanwhile, the main fleet engages the Shriken forces to buy time and draw attention away from the infiltration teams. Chen paces the bridge of the Nemesis as reports filter in from the strike teams. 3 of the solar flare platforms have been disabled, but 4 remain active, their energy signatures building toward critical levels. Strike Team Alpha has reached primary Nexus point, Quan announces. "Deploying biological agent now." The effect is immediate and astonishing. Across space, Shriken ships suddenly halt mid-maneuver. Some drift aimlessly. Others collide with each other in a spectacular display of confusion. "What's happening?" Chen demands. Reeves monitors the sensor readings with scientific wonder. The targeted agent is working. It's severing the connection between the Shriken and their Nexus beings. One by one, the remaining solar flare platforms power down as their operators lose coordination. Throughout Shriken space, their military capacity collapses like a puppet with cut strings. Hours later, Chen and Reeves stand in a secured chamber aboard a captured Shriken vessel. Before them floats one of the aliens, now disconnected from its Nexus. Its movements are erratic, instinctual rather than intelligent. The multifaceted eyes that once glowed with sapience now pulse with a dim, animalistic awareness. "What have we done to them?" Chen asks, watching the creature respond to simple stimuli with primitive reactions. "We've severed their connection to higher consciousness," Reeves explains, her voice thick with the complexity of her emotions. "Their bodies live, but the civilization, the intelligence that made them what they were, is gone." "Is it reversible?" She shakes her head slowly. The Nexus beings were the repository of their collective knowledge, their history, their culture. With those connections severed, what remains are essentially non-sapient organisms. As human forces secure Shriken worlds with minimal resistance, the ethical implications of their victory hang heavy over the command staff. They haven't physically exterminated the species, but they've ended their existence as a civilization. 5 years later, Dr. Elena Reeves walks through a research facility established on the former Shriken homeworld. Containment fields house specimens of what were once humanity's greatest adversaries, now studied like curiosities. Her research team has preserved vast archives of Shriken technology and knowledge, including confirmation that their warnings about certain FTL technologies were justified. Admiral Chen, now heading Earth's Defense Force, visits on the anniversary of the war's end. Together, they stand before a monument listing every human life lost in the conflict. "Was it worth it?" Reeves asks quietly. "We found another way, but we still ended them." Chen considers the question carefully. "They attacked first, believing they were preventing a catastrophe. We responded, believing we were protecting our species from extinction." He watches a Shriken specimen pulse gently in its containment field. "In the end, we were both right and both wrong." As humanity expands outward into the galaxy, they carry with them the knowledge gleaned from the conflict, both scientific advancements and sobering ethical lessons. They haven't just learned how to end another species, They've learned the terrible responsibility that comes with having that power, and the razor-thin line between survival and becoming the very threat they feared.